Alrighty. Are we live?
We're live.
Alrighty.
Wonderful.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Betsy Freeman Booking Show. I'm here with three wonderful guests to talk about community theater, and we're really excited to have you tune in with us and share your own experiences. Maybe you're interested in community theater, either as a writer, director, producer, actor, or if you just want to be on a board or do something fun. Maybe you've been in community theater for a long time, and you want to share your own thoughts and feelings or just get some advice from some people who've been doing it for a while. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce.
Oh, let's have some more ado.
Ado. What other ado can we have? I'm coming to you live from Costa Mesa, California. And I've known all these folks. Ashley, the longest. We've known each other for quite a while. Yeah, from back in the day in Illinois. Steve for quite some time. Steve and Julie, I've known you a good long time as well. So I'm very excited to have you here. Julie, why don't I have you go first? Could you introduce yourself? Tell us where you're coming from and about your involvement in community theater. And then I'll pass it off to Ashley and then Steve to introduce himself.
Sure. Okay. Well, my name's Julie Fleming. I live in Roseburg, Oregon, where I am currently waiting out COVID to get back involved in theater. I moved here just a few years ago, and COVID struck right when I was still kind of in the relaunch into a new community here with theater. Before that, I lived in Sumner, Washington, and I was the volunteer coordinator for Act One Theater, a small community theater in the Tacoma area. Before that, I lived in Portland for about 16 years. And during that time, I was involved in a number of different theaters in the area. I sat on the board for Compass Theater, which was trying to launch itself to develop basically new works for people whose stories don't often get told in the theater community. And I also did a lot of volunteering with Opera Theater Oregon, which is a really fun, creative, alternative opera company that does all kinds of crazy productions, like a Baywatch episode for to retell the Ring cycle and that kind of thing. Wow. So they're amazing. And we did some really cool shows while I was involved with them. Most of the time, I'm very much a behind the scenes kind of gal. I like things like site managing and sitting on the board and those kinds of things. I'm really happy to have other people go up in front and act and do that kind of thing. And I love the project management and that kind of thing of dealing with the logistical side of theater.
Wow, I learned so much about you that I didn't know, even though I have read the intro you wrote, and I'm really excited to ask you more questions. Okay, Ashley, you're next.
Thanks. So my name is Ashley Milsop. I live in Billings, Montana, and I am involved. We are blessed, I think, especially for a town of our size, to have several community theater organizations in the community. But I have been involved with just one. It's called Billings Studio Theater. My first show was in 2018. And I've been, I've, contrary to Julie, I've been mostly on stage. So I've been in ensemble, I've been a lead in a straight play last spring. And then this the end of last year, I was assistant stage manager. I was deputized to be assistant stage manager in a show that got kind of big and kind of unwieldy. And then like
all the best shows are.
Well, it was such an interesting, if we have time, I can get into why it was so interesting, but it was like a radio play. It was a radio play performance of an event. Yeah, it was weird. It was like period on period, and there were like a dozen kids, and we were all on stage all at the same time. It was great. Anyway, and then, yeah, so that's my involvement so far. So I still feel like I'm kind of a newbie, even though I've been in a few shows so far. And then of course, COVID kind of took the wind out of everybody's sails a little bit, but we are back in action, baby.
That's awesome. I think it's so great that you got started and got a couple of years of experience, because you were really doing one show right after another up until the pandemic hit. And then you were able to roll with a lot of changes through the pandemic and still be a star. And it was awesome to come see you. I just like, so great. Neil Simon. All right. Steve Alloway.
Where? Oh, here. Hi, I'm Steve Alloway. I'm the co-director of Spirit on Stage. We do live shows in, where are we? Los Angeles. All over Los Angeles, sometimes in the Valley, sometimes in Hollywood. And when COVID hit, we started doing shows on Zoom. We did one show a month on Zoom throughout the entirety of 2021, until December, when we finally were able to get back into a live space. And now we're not sure when we can get back into a live space again, so we're sort of playing that by ear. But I like to say I've been on stage since before I was born. My mother was in theater has been in theater most of her life, and she performed while she was pregnant for me. So, and then I started doing theater pretty much since I could walk. So, my whole life, I act, I write, I direct. Sometimes I can do tech. I've been up in the booth occasionally when there's a booth. I do everything, not all of it well.
Well, but you always have fun and you roll with it. I've seen Steve so Steve and I met in a show back in, I think
2012,
it was 2012.
just about 10 years ago. In fact, actually, if I may, just today in my Facebook memories, I got a notification about the auditions for Geeks.
That's amazing. Yeah, so we were in an original show written by Tom Mizuraka, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Yeah. That was in Hollywood at the Right Act Repertory Theater, their venue. They performed at, it's an Episcopal church, the name of it is escaping me, but very close to Epiphany Space, where Steve and I both like to hang out and work on stuff when we can be in this space. And I've seen Steve do the sort of it's not improv, but almost those 24-hour festivals and things at Zombie Joe's and North Hollywood, where you never know what crazy writer's gonna call upon you to say and do on stage, and it gets pretty crazy. So I always and
sometimes I am the crazy writer.
Yes, and I've really enjoyed watching the fairy tales and things that y'all have produced. So I am Betsy Freeman. Like I said, I have been doing theater like Steve. My mom has a theater degree from the University of Oregon, and so and she's been acting for a long time. So I was mostly singing and playing piano since childhood. So acting, though, there was, there were Christmas plays, and there at church, there were things that were written for school productions. My dad also writes scripts. So I won't even go into all the craziness that I've been through, mostly really good stuff, really fun stuff. And then in 7th and 8th grade, I started doing musical theater with the Urbana Park District, which was really fun in Urbana, Illinois. Really great youth production. So everyone is 18 or under. We did the Music Man, then we did the Mikado, and then a couple of years later, I got to play for Miss Sarah and Fiddler on the Roof, which is awesome. And I would say, honestly, leading into the first question for everybody, and let's keep the same order for this round. We'll go to Julie first, and Ashley, then Steve. What impact has involvement with community theater had on your life? I'm going to answer first because my answer is short. Recruiting my friends or being with my friends in community theater is the most fun, especially if they're enjoying it. Hopefully they have a good time. That's been the most fun for me. And what have you learned about yourself? That's the second part. Julie, we'll go to you.
Oh boy. Well, I guess what I would say is that I learned that I was capable of a lot of things this has been a huge confidence booster for me. I'm definitely kind of shy, and I don't necessarily have that kind of confidence. And I grew up in some really small towns. And so when I was in a couple of small school plays, and, I learned like pretty much nothing about how theater works. If you told me about Tech Week or something like that, I have no idea what the terminology is or anything like that. But fortunately, I had an English teacher in high school who said, when you go to college, when you get to the big city, you need to get out there. You need to check out the arts. You need to see things and learn things and experience them, because there's a whole world outside this little town that you don't know anything about. And, maybe I'm the only one, but when I went to college, I started going to plays, and I started going to live music, and I was like, wow, there is amazing stuff going on out here. I had no idea. And so I came up from a really different background. But I think for me, everybody talks a lot about how it's a great community, and you can how to make these great friends and all of this stuff. It can also be hard work and really lonely, and it can really try your confidence. And I've learned a lot about kind of what I say would be the power of yes. So saying yes, sometimes I think there's a real power in saying yes in theater to things you don't think that you can do, and trying them and finding out, yeah, actually I can do that. And maybe I do it badly. I mean, I assisted directed a play, and I didn't know anything about what I was doing. I knew very little about so many things, and it was kind of ghastly. People laughed at me, and I know they talked to the director and complained about me, but I learned a lot during that experience. And now I know more, so I'm ready for another show. I mean, each time you find out, you learn things from the past time, and you go through another, you get another show, and it's a great experience to always find out something new. I also learned through that, I learned the power of negotiation, which is you need to also ask hard questions. What am I being asked to do? What's the time commitment? What's the emotional commitment? What's the logistics of what I'm supposed to do? And can I do that? Is it something that I can realistically contribute to this community? Because I don't want to let people down. And so there's the trade-off of that. Sometimes you get in over your head because you just don't know. And sometimes you need to learn to say no to that, or yes to the other thing. But it's, I've definitely learned a lot about boundaries and establishing myself and figuring out who I can be, which isn't a lot of times who I thought I was when I started.
Wow, that's a great description of theater, because on any number of levels, I definitely, and I'm sorry that people were jerks. I mean, there's nothing worse to be than being laughed at when you're not supposed to get a laugh. But if you can, and it sounds like you have really recovered from that, and that's happened to me on, film sets when I was behind the scenes trying to fill a role that I was just stepping up to fill as a volunteer, and everyone knew I was new to it, and it was just like, you gotta give me a break here. Like, if you wanted a real fill in the blank, you should have hired a real fill in the blank. Okay, Ashley, how about you?
Gosh, the biggest impact that community theater has had really I know a lot of people I hear, talk about the theater as family, or, that kind of place of family. And I would go one step farther and say that I've really kind of found my tribe in my theater people. I mean, mind you, it's not always rainbows and butterflies, but I think working together to create something is just an incredibly like powerful thing. And definitely I realized during COVID, when we were in the middle of rehearsing Matilda the musical when the shutdown happened, and so we were so close. We had been, I can't remember how long we were rehearsing, and then everything just stopped. And then for almost all of 2020, there was nothing, no walking into the theater and smelling that backstage sawdust and paint and all that stuff, nothing. And then we started rehearsing for a Christmas show, and then we had a wave of COVID, and then that went away. And so kind of, I realized how important it is to create with people. And this is the main way that I have to do that. And I have some dear friends that I never in a million years would have, our paths probably never would have crossed. And we certainly wouldn't have become such close friends if we hadn't been, kind of in this, this incredibly bonding experience of creating something and putting it out for the world to see night after night after night. And so that's been the biggest couple of impacts. And then what I've learned about myself, that's kind of a tough question, because it's hard to put in words. I think I have learned a lot of patience. I don't know if I had the patience before. And that includes for other people, ideally on a good day, but also on a good day for myself, and having grace for myself, and reminding myself, all the things that I say to my castmates and to the crew, and just be like, okay, well, this is why we rehearse. You're fine. But then the next minute when I make a mistake, turning around and saying that to myself is really important. And so I think I've learned a little grace for myself. I say that now. Ask me the next time I'm in the middle of rehearsals and just telling myself I'm never going to learn everything. But I think those are probably the biggest things.
Those are great. And theater is great training for so many things in life that way. Vulnerability, being willing to try new things, what you both said so far, that's not easy. It's become more trendy now to even talk about vulnerability. We didn't even use that word, because we're so afraid to be vulnerable in our culture and to break in front of people and to show emotion. And the stage and the screen is the one place where you're allowed to do that. And yet people still treated actors and actresses as like kind of outcasts, and we're not like the most beloved people in the world most of the time. So but
no dogs or actors allowed.
That's right, Steve.
Yeah. So theater's always been a huge part of who I am and what I am. I don't really know who I would be apart from theater. I hear some of my friends talk about sometimes, I'm gonna take a break from theater for a while. I tried to take a few years ago. Tried to take a break from theater. Was a really tumultuous time in my life, and I really had other things to worry about. Tried to take a break from theater. It lasted maybe 3 months. And then somebody offered me a show, and okay, I guess I'm back. And that's sort of what I do. I go from show to show to show. And then during COVID, that was the longest break from theater I've ever had. Wasn't until around about August of 2020 we started doing live things, and it started out as like stage readings, and then end of 2020 and into 2021, we finally started doing not real theater, but Zoom theater, closest approximation. So that was
TV
really
theater. Let's be honest, it's TV theater, which is
that's exactly what it is. In fact, one of the Zoom plays that I wrote and directed was formatted as a television broadcast.
Awesome.
Was a lot of fun. I'm actually really proud of that one. But
As
anyway,
it should be.
what I've learned about myself from theater, and it's difficult to learn things about myself when it's like I've been doing it all the time. So how do I really? But what I've learned is, hang on, I had this a second ago, and then I lost.
No, you know what? I'll jump in and we'll come back to you. I'll say what I learned about myself, I think, from this from community theater is it
Okay.
really exposed some of my immaturities in various ways, you know, and I could, you know, and for years when I really wanted to be acting and either didn't have enough time to do it or just didn't have enough energy for it or just didn't get whatever roles I wanted, you know, it was really hard to sit and watch a show that I had auditioned for, or just to go to the theater at all to support my friends was hard because I would really wish I was doing something. And I'm not, it's not like that for me anymore at all because now I've done enough of it where I appreciate much more how hard it is to carry, you know, a show, to be the one who has to memorize all of the lines, be in every place at the right time, learn all the choreography, and, you know, keep your head on straight. And it is not simple, it's not easy, and anybody who says it is has never done it. Steve?
Yeah. So here's what I've learned: you never know what you're truly capable of until there's nobody else to do it.
Sure.
That, you know, I've always, you know, I'm an actor and a writer and sometimes a director, and that's the main thing that I do. But, you know, and I like to say, you know, I'm not manually artistic at all. I can't draw or paint or sculpt or anything like that. And, you know, I don't really do design. But when you need a costume and there's nobody else to get the costume, you do what needs to be done. Or, you know, if a set needs to be built or painted, or actually, and I wish, give me just like a couple of seconds.
Oh, he's got something to show us.
Props.
And he's gone.
We lost Steve, but we could look at this lovely virtual background behind him. And
I don't. I'm gonna take a lot of time trying to find it, but there was
No fear.
in this one show that I was doing on Zoom, there was a dragon, and it was I've been working with puppets the last couple of years, which has been also a lot of fun. It's always been a passion of mine, and now, you know, on Zoom we decided, why don't we just do it? But this one play that my mother wrote, she wrote in a dragon, and I've got this dragon puppet that I've had for a long time, this tiny little green dragon puppet. But as you see, the problem with the green screen, he doesn't really show up. So you can kind of see him. There.
Oh, he goes in and out.
Yeah. Well, it's because he's green. So with the green screen, you can barely see him. So I'm going like this, and you can't really like that. And so, and this is, you know, this is the puppet that the role was written for, but he's green. So I had to build my own separate dragon puppet that wasn't green. I took a sock and I put some stuff on it, but, you know, I had to make my own dragon puppet, and I did it. Not good, but it's, you know, it's kind of cute.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the pandemic, I think, forced us in, you know, or scarcity or someone getting sick, you know, has forced us all into, you know, last year I was called in at the last minute because of sickness by another singer to be part of not a stage production, but a filmed production of an opera. And I was like, film acting, no. But you know, I was prepared. I knew the role. I could relearn it in time. And those are the things that you don't know you're being prepared for when you do it the first time. Or, you know, you had a sock, you know, thank God you had the sock.
Right.
So, and you're willing to make a puppet. I mean, you're willing. Ashley?
Exactly.
I just think, guys, I just want to applaud you. I mean, Steve, we just met, but like for both you and for Betsy, I think taking kind of meeting COVID and just kind of just like towing up and being like, okay, so what next? So what do we do now with this? As opposed to kind of turning in and hunkering, which is quite frankly what my inclination was. I just think that's so, I applaud that so much. I think it's so remarkable, and I think it definitely I think it probably served a purpose and brightened a lot of people's lives to have that to look forward to. That creativity, like observing that in that moment, I think was really great. So
well, getting to see you, actually, I'm going to bring you the next question to you. Getting to see you was really inspiring, and knowing that live theater was going on, and you all were masking, you were social distancing, you're doing all the things that you could do to protect, each other and yourselves. And, there still are, these weird social repercussions for doing something that doesn't seem absolutely essential, right? Which we could get into a whole conversation, but I really don't like to focus too much on COVID. So let's just go to the next question. Okay. If you get input on your theater's upcoming season, or if you'd like to, what would you look for? What do you look for in productions that you put on? What kind of shows do you like to do? And then, or as an actor, I wanted to throw this in because I love this question, but as an actor, what are the shows that you choose to audition for? What do you look for in a show that you're like, okay, this one it might be worth my time? Ashley.
Well, I have no input whatsoever on what productions Billings Studio Theater or BST as we call it, what BST does. But as far as what productions I decide to go out for, I have a pretty I limit myself pretty severely. So BST has so if it's during the season, if it's from the whatever it is, September through May, there's always at least one production in rehearsal while the previous production is performing. And so a person could potentially be performing one show while rehearsing for the next show, and then even auditioning for the next one right after. Like it can be quite a lot. And so I have the one exception to this might be if there are two shows back to back that I just like cannot live without, but I haven't run into that yet. But I've just decided I need a break between shows because I work full time, and I work a pretty demanding job, and I volunteer with my church, and so I need that minute to like clean my house and cook real food and like wash my dishes between shows. So I have just decided that I haven't done a show back to back. So that kind of helps limit a little bit. And then the other thing is I always read the script. Our scripts are available for a 3-day perusal whenever auditions are announced. And I always read the script and just kind of decide if that is something that I want to soak my life in for the next couple. I mean, depending on, if it's the musical at the beginning of a season, then it's like, do I want to soak my life in this for the whole summer and into the fall? And there have been some times when I'm like, this is fine. Like I'll go and I'll support people and I'll usher or whatever, but like this is a little raunchy for me to want to like just kind of bask in and like marinate in for the next couple months. And then the final question is, do I connect with it somehow? I've been and that means like I was in A Christmas Story in 2019. And so by connect with, I would just think like, oh, I love this story, and that's all it takes. But I just want it to, I want the time that I put in to be meaningful either to me or to other people, and ideally to both. And so with all that together, and then of course I have to, and then I audition. And so do I get a part is the last thing. So with all those kind of considerations, I've been averaging 2 shows a season, with the exception of COVID. And so it's been enough. I feel like I probably, could maybe add a third in a given season if things line up, but that just hasn't been in the cards yet.
Thank you. Yeah, that's all good stuff. Steven.
Well, my group, we don't exactly have a formal season, but we generally average about 2 shows a year. Sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's just 1. But usually, the last few years, it's been about 2 shows a year. Well, last year we did 1 a month, but that was on Zoom. Aside from that, and how we choose, it's my mother is the director of the group, and I'm the co-director, and it's basically just when one of us has an idea, and it's basically what we have an idea for, or what's going on in our lives, or whatever. Like in 2018, my mother went to Kazakhstan that year to teach English, and I went to Ireland for vacation. And so we came back and said, "What show are we going to do?" And we love fairy tales and folk tales, so we did a show that was a series of Irish and Kazakh folk tales. And what's the connection between Ireland and Kazakhstan? Well, we were there. And then at Christmas, and we've done this every year since 2001. At Christmas, every year we do a Christmas variety show. It started out as just a regular variety show, songs and sketches and whatever. And since about 2006, it usually has an overarching plot, but it's still, we've got the songs interspersed. And for that one, my mother and I, we take turns. She does it one year, I do it the next, and so that's how we choose.
That's really smart. I like that, and I love the Christmas variety show. I think I've only come one time, but I want to come back. Christmas time is so interesting for performers because
for all of us.
Yeah, I will say for me, the productions I choose. I am really particular about what I audition for if I could get a hold of the script ahead of time. And with original material, that's not always the case. And in some cases, they do not want to let the entire script out of their hands until you've already been cast ahead of time. So,
but why? Why?
Well, because it's mostly some of it is a time crunch thing. You know what I mean? You could ask for the entire thing, but a lot of it is just like, we're casting, we're seeing 100 actors. So we're only going to send you some sides. And then, if I'm busy, I might not have time to read the whole thing until after I get cast. It's not only like they just don't want to, are afraid that somebody's going to steal it or something like that. I mean, I'm sure there's some people that think that way, but I don't think most people do once the script is done and everybody's seen it, it's done. But, I am really picky about what I am going to be asked to be doing on stage. And even with Geeks the Musical, like, I was not comfortable with all of it and was like in agony over some of the things, some of the dancing and stuff. So I've had a few agonizing experiences like that where I just was like, wait, what is happening here? I was not informed. I didn't pull people aside. But it's always worked out okay. So far, I've not been destroyed by it. But I try to look, I really like musical productions. And I just try to find, I don't like super depressing shows, but there are some that are so well written and the characters are so well done that it's worth it. Okay. Julie, thoughts?
Well, so I haven't really been in the position of when I haven't really gone for roles, and I haven't been in a position where I really got to choose material for a theater. But I mean, I think other than that, just for folks out there that might be watching that might wonder, I mean, there's logistical things you have to think about, things like how much money is this going to cost us to stage this? Do we have a venue that's going to work with the requirements for the show? We've done shows where we had to haul an actual stage across, in 3 sections on a semi truck across town because we were performing in a place that didn't have a stage, and we had to move it back and forth in sections. So you kind of end up dealing with all kinds of crazy logistics sometimes, and you have to think too about, like, am I going to get enough butts and seats to pay for this thing at the end? So there's all kinds of, at one level you want to think about, like, what's the message I'm wanting to give out? What's a show that really grabs my excitement and my attention? And then there's all these very real factors when you're on the board, or or if you're the creative director for your organization, that I think are really hard choices that sometimes get made. And sometimes I've seen those get changed, like after the season is even planned, and that can be a big switch, and suddenly then the rest of the group is suddenly kind of trying to have to shuffle and say, boy, I had all these people excited to do this show, and now I've got to get people to get excited about something else, and that can be tough. For stuff I've done more musical kinds of things where I was singing in on chorus or that kind of thing. I've really looked for anything that stretched me as far as interesting experiences or things like that. And I think the wildest thing I got to do was sing with Portland Taiko, which is the taiko drum ensemble.
Oh, wow.
And they did they did a time-based art piece at the annual show. I forget what it's called in Portland. And we were working with somebody who was doing a lot of vocal manipulations in the foreground. And so it was really cool. I've never gotten to sing with something that loud. And I remember the craziest thing there was that we did a sound check, and something exploded, and it was like a 4-hour sound check because they were trying to balance drums with voices and all these synthesizers, and it just went nuts. So adventure, excitement, do something new. But yeah, but I'm with you, Betsy. There's a lot of things where you can kind of end up in a situation where maybe it's not comfortable, and you have to figure out, like, where do I negotiate, and where do I say no, or what do I do when you're in a situation that's something you have questions about.
Yeah, and I think, what Ashley was saying about, these, like, for all of us, these big ambitious new things that we're doing. I mean, we had like over 200 people under, 18 or under in this production of The Music Man. And, I was cast in the adult chorus. I was 12. And and we were wearing corsets. Every one of us was wearing a corset. And so I never done that before. And actually it's great for singing, and it's, it's not, it was not painful, but we learned a lot about it because we had an excellent costumer who was very authentically minded, which is, one of my favorite things about theater. Okay, so we've got about 20 some minutes to get through possibly 3 more questions. I bet we're not going to make it all the way to the end, but we can try.
I believe in us.
I believe in us. Number 3, you don't have to talk too fast if you don't want to, but you can. It's fun. How have you dealt with stage fright or nerves or imposter syndrome? Did everyone you all got a chance to answer that last one, right? Cool. Yeah. All right. Who wants to take the question about stage fright first?
I'll take it. Yeah, and actually, well, I mean, and by take it, I mean, I'll start the conversation because I'm just curious to hear what you guys have to say. Yeah. I think, pacing backstage and praying quite silently. I think, you know, for the most part, for most productions, I have felt like I haven't had stage fright too bad. I mean, I'll definitely still get that like adrenaline boost when I step out on stage, but for the most part, I feel like the work, there's a sense in which the die has been cast. If you've put in the work, if you put in the rehearsal, if you've put in the prep, if you've rehearsed like it's the real thing, then the real thing is not much of a different beast. Except you know,
except that it is.
Except for that it is. But the show that I was in last spring that Betsy, I was so honored that Betsy came out to Billings to see. I was one of the leads, and it was a pretty small cast, and it was Brighton Beach Memoirs by Neil Simon. It was just a terrific show. What I was worried about most was letting everybody else down. I was worried about biffing it, not for, well, yes, for myself, you know, but because I knew how much work everybody else had, or I didn't even know how much work, but I had seen a lot of the hard work that everybody else was putting into it. And it was a 6-person cast. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Yeah, 6-person cast. And so we had worked really hard together. And so that was the hardest thing. So that's the most I've ever gotten stage fright. And so I just kind of got through it. We'll see if I ever run into that again. But I think imposter syndrome is something that I do. You know, usually there'll be partway through rehearsal, I'll just have this moment of like, any minute now, the director is kind of pull me aside and say, this was a mistake. and so it goes back. I have to trust that. I have to trust the director and the assistant director to, coach you well, or direct you well, or just kind of tell you what you need to do to succeed in this part, and trust that the decision that they made was the right one. And then just give myself grace to keep on learning and to be in a position of learning and growing instead of just being there, because this is why I say it all the time. This is why we rehearse, is like, you know, whatever mistake I just made, or whatever thing I just did, choice I just made that just did not fly, and we're not going to do that again. Like, this is why we rehearse, because if we were ready,
I actually say that all the time too.
If we were ready from casting to perform, I mean, that's the only reason why we wouldn't have rehearsals, right? And so we have rehearsals for a reason. So I think giving myself that grace, and I'm sorry, Betsy, I'm talking a lot. I think that's the best antidote I have found to my own imposter syndrome, but I would love to hear all your thoughts.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I will say for me, you know, when I was in junior high, we did what we called literary contest, which was, you know, short scenes, and we, you know, comedy, drama, solo, duets. I think there were even some ensemble things. And then we went and competed against other, you know, kids from different schools. And then I was on speech team for 2 or 3 years in high school. And so it's rare for me to have super memory lapses, but, you know, the importance of drilling line by line, you know, I learned. I mean, I was a pretty quick memorizer back then, but I didn't realize how much I needed to practice it all out loud until I screwed up in that classroom with just 2 judges staring at me by myself. A speech that I wrote, and all of a sudden I didn't remember it. So there's nothing more embarrassing like that than that when you're like 15, right? It's just like horrifying. But you know, this stuff isn't easy. If you're watching actors thinking that it's simple, when you're in front of a lot of people that you know. I mean, some people get really scared being in front of an audience of people they know. It's actually more intimidating than people they don't know. Some people feel more comfortable having their friends out in the audience. So there's, that element. I'm really sensy about energy. So for me, the best antidote is actually rehearsing in the space, physically getting in that actual space, because the kinetic stuff is the hardest. So anything that involves dancing or blocking and actually keeping my head up and not falling over while I'm doing it, that's really important. That's how I feel confident and prepared. And costumes and makeup, because that usually doesn't get added in until tech week, and then you're fixing it, and you don't want to have to think about all that. You got to get all that stuff together and rehearse with it as much as you can, because otherwise your character and your acting is not come through the same way. Okay, Steve or Julie?
Great.
Steve.
So as far as imposter syndrome goes, deal with it all the time, just about any show I'm doing, and just in life in general. I'm an imposter. Don't tell anybody. Okay, now that we've gotten that out of the way. So there's always in the back of my mind, whatever, whether I'm, acting or directing or doing whatever it is that I'm doing, there's always, what if this ends in disaster? What if nobody comes to this show? What if they come and they hate it? What if they come and they hate me specifically? Actually, at the end of one show, I had one of my cast members, like the day after the show ended, a cast member Facebook messaged me and said, "In 10 years, you were the worst director I've ever had." And that hangs over my head every show I direct now. And I'm thinking, what if I am? What if I'm the worst director ever? What if I can't do this? What if,
What a
And then I
jerk.
think, a friend of mine gave me some advice once. It was sort of general advice, but I took it. If you are not doing something that absolutely terrifies you, then you're doing something wrong. And I think about that whenever I've got imposter syndrome. I'm like, I'm terrified to do this, and that's exactly why I need to be doing it.
I love that. Julie.
Yeah, I mean, I think you all have said pretty much everything I was going to say, except I think the one thing I would add is that in both, the preparation is the key. I totally agree with that for stage fright. And as for the imposter syndrome, for me, the thing that helps is to separate that out and say that's the imposter syndrome talking. That is not necessarily reality. That is not necessarily, I try to fact check. I had so much anxiety about coming on this show, because I was like, there are going to be people who've been doing this for so much longer and they know so much more. And my mind went crazy, y'all, with all the things that made me totally unqualified to do this today. But I sat back and I said, basically, look at all the stuff you have done. And I have something valid to say. And so that's what I sometimes I just have to say that's the thing over there in the corner, and I talk back at it. So that's the only thing I would really add at this point, because you all have said everything beautifully.
That's really important. Ashley.
Can I add one thing? So there was so I listened to NPR, and there's a show that's on Sunday afternoons in Montana that's called Hidden Brain. And a couple of weeks ago, they had a full hour all about imposter syndrome and like what it is, and then how to counter it from like a muckety muck psychologist type guy. And it was really, really interesting and really useful. And one of those things was like, celebrate your successes, remind yourself, like you said, Julie, like counter that voice of like, you're not good enough with except for I published this paper, is what, like, an example, but that kind of thing. So that's super a valid thing, is like, no, count your successes and own them. Because Julie, I'm so glad you're here, because it's so interesting to see, well, and Steve, like the behind the scenes stuff. It's just so interesting to have your perspectives.
Absolutely. And we wouldn't, theater is supposed to be dream work. It's supposed to be dream work makes the dream work. Good movies are made by good teams. Good shows are put together by good teams, and teams that work together well over time. Like, that's the dream. I think most of us, I didn't really know that I was a team builder or a networker or a behind the scenes person even until I was, more of an adult. And that was a real relief. And actually, when people told me like the people behind the scenes have the most fun, I was skeptical at first, but now I see. Let's switch up the order because we only have about less than 10 minutes left, I think. Let's do the 5th question. And next time you guys come back, let's talk more about the nitty gritty details. Let's talk about people, because I think that the most important aspect of all of this and is being with yes people, saying yes. And like Julie said, if you are going to design the perfect board for your nonprofit community theater, and thank you so much to Ashley and Julie for writing these fantastic questions, who would be on it and why? Like, what are the specialties and areas of expertise? Who are the people that need to be on your board? Like, okay, let's say pick 2 or 3 people that if you only had a board of 4 people, including yourself, who are you going to need? Who wants to go first? Steve?
Yeah, sure. I'd want, basically I'd want a creative person, a money person, and a marketing person.
Good.
Because, that's,
Good.
I do the creative stuff. I'm not as good at the other side, and that's also important in theater. And, would want somebody who can do that and, get the word out about the shows and make sure that we can pay for the shows and things like that. So that's who I would want on my board.
And marketing is huge. Like, that was the big point that I fell down the one time I co-produced a musical, in terms of like, I did not make sure we had an additional publicity person right at the beginning. That would have sold us all the extra tickets we needed, because we had a great show and it was very well attended, but I could not be a publicity and a producer and a pianist at the same time. That's stupid.
Yeah, see, it's the same for me. See, I actually marketing is what I do for a living, but I can't do it for myself for some reason. And when I'm doing the creative stuff, I can't also be doing the marketing.
No, and it's not fair to you. That self-marketing, self-promotion mentality that we have right now doesn't work that well. It really doesn't. You could definitely promote things that you're doing with other people. Promoting what you're doing by yourself or as the head of it, you need a team to help you with that. Right. Julie?
I would say great networkers in general, but I'd want, and if I just had a fantasy of whoever I could get, I would want an attorney with experience, with expertise in maybe intellectual property or entertainment law. I'd want a financial person who would be able to say this is viable and this is not viable, and keep my idealism in check with the realities of what would keep my organization going. And I would probably hate that person, but I would still need them and love them for that. And I would want like the most popular person in town, whoever that was, who had the most people who could help me network and sell my show, and also be a great, basically I'd want a publicist, but those would be my 3 top people if I were having to pick.
Great. Ashley?
Oh gosh, I would I don't know a lot about boards. I think the networking is definitely key, but I think something that we have, so I am just, my socks are blessed off for being involved with BST, because it's even though we do have a few different community theater organizations in town, Billings Studio Theater has been around. I think this is its 69th season, and so it's established pretty well. It's kind of a pillar of the Billings community, and so we need the publicity and whatnot, but we don't. And because I've never been involved in a different community theater, I don't know any different. So I'm just going to talk about BST. But we have a lot of customer engagement, customer loyalty, is the word I'm going for. But what I think is something that is untapped is all those folks, all those creative folks who don't show up to auditions, and we don't know why, because they're not there. And the folks who don't show up to, you know, work on set and do the behind the scenes stuff, and the people who don't, you know, contribute their, you know, their vintage fashion knowledge to costuming and all that fun stuff. And so I think that getting the folks involved on that end, on the creative side, I think would be something that would be really awesome. And then I think you do need that visionary. I think you need that person. You need to have countered with the person who is like, okay, actual dragons don't exist. Like, do you remember?
That's you.
But like, you need the visionary to have that to kind of shoot for, you know, to try to shoot for the stars, and do like shoot big. And then if we don't quite get there, that's fine, but at least we did something bigger than we would have expected us to be able to do. And so I think and then yes, all the money people and the lawyer is actually a really great idea. But I think those are the two who I would want to be involved.
That's great. Yeah, if you have a lawyer on your team and you have an accountant on your team, I mean, that's great. I mean, for a board, you need 5 people. So I said pick 3. You know, that's just for time purposes. We got 5 minutes. You know, I would say you need an aesthetic person. Find somebody who really knows like fabrics. Find somebody, you know, and ideally that person already knows your theater space, knows what it can do. You know, that might be a separate person. It could be your resident stage manager who's going to make sure that safety is, you know, really knows the ins and outs of every device and every door and everything that you're, you know, someone who really knows fabrics, who like can be your, you know, your set dresser and your costumer, or, you know, at least your costumer. I just feel like costumes are so important. I mean, there's nothing worse than doing all this work and then finding out that you have to wear something that doesn't have seams or something, you know, that just like I mean, I've had to do that, and it, you know, it's just one time, but it really sticks out in your head. And in the production, it does not go unnoticed. And then I think, who is my last person? I think you need someone who is, you know, an event planner that isn't just a director or the show, but somebody who's going to plan those fundraisers for you, or, you know, they don't have to oversee every aspect of it. You could hire someone to do the publicity, or even the accounting if you have to, but there should be one person that can, you know, carry those things over and is going to oversee your mailing list, and who is really trustworthy. It doesn't run away with your passwords. So you've got to have that social media aspect. So it's tough, actually. It's tough to whittle it down to 4 people. You need a good board, and they need to be mature human beings.
Oh man.
Ish. How's that?
All right. This theater, where are we going to find 4 mature people?
Well, you get to play. You get to have fun. It's just that, you know, please don't steal money from the till to treat your favorite actors to a movie and not the actors that you didn't like today. Steve. Just kidding. All right, so okay, we've got 2 minutes. Tell me about what you're working on now. Steve, what's on your plate?
That is an excellent question. I've got this idea that I want to do. I'm not sure. I'm still writing it, but it's the next thing that I want to do. It's difficult to explain.
Okay.
Come back to me.
Julie, what are you working on? You said you're waiting out the pandemic. Are you reading anything good, writing anything good? You got some dream plays that you want to put on, or operas?
No, mostly I'm just planning to start going to plays and check out the local. There's like 2 companies in the area, so I need to check them out. So the first step for me is always going and showing up, and there's a part of me that wants to just say, hey, come pick me and take me in and put me to work. But I think I need to go see some shows before I do that. And so that's my next step.
That sounds like a good way to get the vibe of the situation. I like to assess the vibe of the situation before I jump in. I've learned that. Ashley, what are you working on?
I am planning to. So the Christmas show just closed, as I said, the Sunday before Christmas. What I'm doing right now is thinking about preparing for another audition. We are doing, Billings Studio Theater is doing Spitfire Grill, which is a musical.
Ooh.
The audition announcement just came out yesterday. So it's the 20th, auditions are February 20 and 21, and then it'll run in April, I think. So I was just on my church's worship team this morning, and so I was preparing for that, and then starting this week I'm gonna start kind of working up my musical audition and hopefully check out that script and all that fun stuff.
Oh man, I really like that movie. I have no idea about the music. I'm gonna listen to it now. I'm really curious.
It's on Spotify. It's very cohesive. Like some shows, like you listen to the playlist and you're like, oh, what happened? Am I on the wrong show? Because it just doesn't really mesh. But it's a very cohesive set, I think.
Awesome. All right. Well, I am working on filming projects this year, so I'm not going to be on stage. I think I try to do one something or other performing a year, but I think this year is going to be different, and I'm okay with that. But I would happily take part in viewing whatever y'all do if I can. Thank you for being here. Let's come back in a few months and do this again and talk about more about community theater. Thanks so much. And Steve will don't forget to post your links below to your theater groups and any upcoming productions so we can follow you if you would like us to do that.
Oh, I got my thing. It's
I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's a historical sci-fi vaudeville musical review.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. And
is
on that
it
note,
Irresponsible Time Travelers?
it is not.
Okay.
But that's gonna have thing. That's got a future too, and a past.
It's got an Instagram that you can follow right now.
Yes, so. I'll post that.
Thank you. All right. Cheers, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Really nice to meet you both.